Hello and welcome back to my studio. I'm Caroline Stengel, and today I'm going to tell you about how to set up your printing area for printing your linocut block. So here's my table. I've got all these things laid out for you. I'm going to set the camera up a little bit different so you can see it better. Okay, so here you've got my printmaking workstation, my work area that I've got set up. You're going to need a table, a flat surface to work on. This is my plexiglass sheet, and it's great for rolling your ink out on. Here I've got my brayer, which people often call a roller, but it's called a brayer. Always lay it on its back when you're not using it to keep the rubber nice and smooth. I have a palette knife, which you can substitute just a flat kitchen knife, a butter knife, and that's for dispensing the ink with. Here's my ink. It is Speedball block printing ink, and it is water soluble, which means you can wash it up with soap and water, and it doesn't have any fumes, which makes it really safe, especially if you have chemical sensitivities. Here's my blocks that I carved, and I posted videos of myself carving them. There's the newt on the leaf for the greeting card, and then here's the other newt on a leaf for the gift tag. And I have my original drawings here too, so you can see how it'll look when it'll print, because the image that's on your block reverses when you print. Something to keep in mind when you're using text. It's a little trick with printmaking that whenever you make a print, it reverses the image on your plate. And that's actually something to note if you wanted to plan an image with text in it. Remember that your text will be reversed, so when you carve it into your plate, it has to be backwards. But when you draw it on your design, it can be the right way around, and then when it transfers, it'll be backwards, and then it'll print properly the right way around. Anyways, I digress. Let's get back to this setup. So I just keep those on hand just as a reference for myself. And then I've got a little bowl here with a wet rag inside. I just use this to keep my fingers clean, because the mark of a good printmaker is no marks at all on your paper. No fingerprints anywhere, because you've got a practice of keeping clean fingers and clean hands when you're printing. So hopefully you've got a bowl somewhere at home, or a little plate or something you can use, and a clean rag. Try and find one that's lint and hair and dust free, as clean as you can, because any of those little particles will get into your printmaking and cause little marks that you didn't intend. And then what we've got here is a silver spoon, which makes a great press if you don't have a lot of money to spend. Presses cost thousands of dollars, and this only is a couple bucks or less than $1 at a thrift shop, so these work great. And I've also got here an example of what's known as a baron. This is a baron. You hold it like this and you press on down like this onto your back of your print, rub it around, and that will serve as a press as well. But we didn't have the budget to put those in your art kits, so we're using the spoon, which works just as well. And then over here, I have my stack of paper. Got a couple sheets of white, and then the rest is green, because I thought green would look kind of cool with my leaf that the newt is sitting on. And then I've got an empty space here. This is my printing area, and I've made really sure that it's clean and free of dust and particles and stuff, so that when I lay my print down and take my print impression on my paper, I'm not getting any dirt into my picture. So that's my setup. Now let's do a demo. So the first thing you want to do when you're printmaking is roll out your ink. So let's get this jar open. I only want to take a small amount at a time, because it does dry rather quickly, especially in drier seasons like summertime. So just that much to begin with, and then I'm just going to put it on my plexiglass here. And I want to keep the lid over this. I don't have to screw it all the way back on, but I just want to keep the moisture of the ink intact. I don't want it to dry out. And I'm going to use my rag, get my fingers clean again. That's just a habit that's good to have no matter what when you're printmaking. Okay, so I've got my ink. I'm going to hold my brayer. And what I want to do is roll. I'm going to just shift the camera here slightly. I want to roll this ink out, and what you want to do is when you roll it, you go forward and lift it up, and then back and lift it up. This is all in slow motion. When you do this quickly, and you do that little lift at each end, forward lift, backward lift, your brayer will spin just a little bit in midair, and that'll spread the ink a little more quickly. Otherwise, you just keep going over the same part of the brayer over and over. So you don't need to roll out a big patch. Otherwise, your ink gets spread a little too thin. That's about good enough. Not much bigger than my hand, should be adequate. See, there's my hand. And you know that you have just the right amount of ink when your brayer rolling through the ink sounds a bit like a bicycle wheel on wet pavement. It makes that little hiss. And your ink should have this stippling pattern that's quite fine, quite dense, really small little peaks of ink. It shouldn't look like mud under a tractor wheel. If your ink is too thick, you're going to end up with too much ink all over your plate, and it'll get into all those little grooves that you've carved and seep out when you print, and you won't get the distinct lines and shapes that you were hoping for. You'll just get a big blob of ink, and you don't want that. So you want to go for that nice bicycle wheel on wet pavement sound, and you want your ink to look nice and even like this. Okay. Now my brayer is fully covered and I'm ready to ink my plate. So I'm just going to work with this big one for now. It's a little easier if I turn it this way, so I'm going to try that. Get that ink off my nail. Okay. All right, this is an exciting part because it reveals the image. There it is. This is the first time I've printed this, so I'm kind of excited. Oh, and I see that there is a tiny little hair in my picture that I don't want. There we go. This would be a good time to catch those things. And if you have a little fleck of dirt anywhere, like I spotted one right here, I'm just going to scrape that off. That will leave a mark in your picture too. So I'm just going to be a little bit of a perfectionist here and pick those up. Okay, so you want to make sure that your ink goes from corner to corner. You might have to load your brayer twice to get enough. But it's best to apply thin layers, multiple thin layers of ink, rather than one layer of thick ink. You'll get better results that way. Okay, so my plate's looking pretty good now. I'm going to lay my brayer down on its back to preserve the rubber. Now, this is important. You don't want to print right here because look at all the ink on your plexiglass. That's going to get onto your paper. So what you want to do is pick up your plate. I'm going to turn it 90 degrees and put it into my printing area, which is nice and clean. Now, before I touch my paper, there's little bits of ink everywhere on my fingers. I want to get rid of those. This is crucial, this part right here. Before you touch your paper, always clean your fingers so that you don't leave a mark. Well, I can't get that out from under my nail, but I don't think it's going to get on my paper. Okay, now let's make a bit of space here. I'm going to do my first proof on some white paper. Now, if you're making greeting cards, you want your image to go on the bottom half of your paper. So it needs to be like this, roughly. So just kind of eyeball it, because you can trim your paper later, and lay it on there lightly. Okay, I think I need to adjust the camera. There we go. There. And then you can smooth the back with your fingers, taking care not to shift the paper around. You want it to stick to your plate and stay in one place. So I'm just going to go over the whole image once with my fingers, make sure it's all adhering to the ink. And you can feel through the paper where all the ridges are and stuff. So that can help you make sure you get right to the edges. And just take your time, don't need to rush. Get all those little details. Okay, and I might even be able to get away with pulling a print with just my fingertips, but I want to use the spoon to make sure. So I'm going to use the spoon to put my thumb in the bowl of the spoon, and then just put a little bit of pressure and burnish or rub the back of this print, taking care to hold it with my other hand here so that it doesn't go anywhere. You don't want it to shift because it'll smudge the image. So just really take your time and be careful. Ooh, I hope I didn't smudge it. It moved a little bit. I think it's okay, it's stuck. Okay, we're almost there. I'm just making sure of the important details. Make sure everything gets a little bit of spoon happening here. Right to the edge. Okay, I think that's good. I'll set my spoon down. I'm just going to double check my hands. They look, oh, there's a little bit of ink there. I just want to make sure. Okay, now comes the reveal. So you want to take one end and just gently peel it back. And you might have to hold the plate. Peel it back. Make sure you get the ink off your fingers if you touched your plate. And there's our first print. Ta-da! I'm going to hang this up to dry. There's lots of different ways that you can do that. You can tape it to the wall. You can lay it out on a table. You can put out a clothesline with some clothespins. You can put up a drying rack for your clothes and tack them onto there. Whatever works for you, just make sure it's a spot that won't be disturbed for a few hours. At least a couple hours, if not overnight. You can sometimes get away with doing it outside, but make sure it's not going to rain or blow them away or whatever. So there you go. That's how you pull a print. just a note about cleanup. All you have to do is take your plexiglass, your brayer, and anything else that touched the ink, like your knife and your linocut plate, to the sink and wash it off with soap and water. And be really careful not to put any dents into your brayer's rubber. And your linocut plate, just lay it out to dry. Don't try to make any more prints while it's wet, because there's little bits of water in the grooves and they'll interfere with your ink. So once you clean up, you're done for the day, and let everything dry. That's it. Good luck.